Hi, this is Scott. I really appreciate our sponsors because they make the show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Developer Express. Become a UI superhero with DevExpress controls and libraries. Deliver elegant.NET solutions that address customer needs today by leveraging your existing knowledge. You can build next-generation touch-enabled solutions for tomorrow. You can download your free 30-day trial at dx.hanselminutes.com. That's dx.hanselminutes.com.
From hanselminutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 470. In this episode, Scott talks with Gina Häußge, creator of OctoPrint.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I am talking with the developer of OctoPrint, Gina Häußge. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you.
I am absolutely thrilled to be talking to you because as people who have been listening to the show lately know, I've been getting into 3D printing. And one of the wonderful things that I discovered as I was doing 3D printing was that the way I was talking to my printer was more complicated than it needed to be. And fortunately, unlike other people who suffered for years before they discovered OctoPrint, I discovered it within just a few hours of starting. People said, "Oh, you've got to get OctoPrint. You've got to get OctoPrint." What is it about OctoPrint that makes it so special?
Well, basically it allows you to control your 3D printer, or your consumer-oriented 3D printer, I have to add, from a web browser. So you put the software on a little embedded computer like a Raspberry Pi. You can also use a laptop or a Windows machine or a Mac or whatever you have lying around. But the Pi is actually the intended use case because it's so cheap. You connect this to your Raspberry Pi, to your printer, and then on the other end to your network. And then you can basically use any web browser on your local network, or if you add something like a port forward or something like that, even from all over the world, to see what your printer is doing, to tell it to print file X, Y, Z, whatever, to manipulate all the access. Actually, not only tell it what to do, but also to see that it does it right. Because with 3D printers right now, we are still not at the point where they are truly plug and play, like, the 2D printers that you know from your office, where you tell them just to print a file and then they will just do it and everything will be fine. But you still need this feedback loop. So this is actually one of the big focus points of OctoPrint, that it does not handle the printer as a black box, but actually allows you to get some feedback of what is going on in there.
Right. With 2D printing, we feel confident. I can send 100 pages to my printer and, as long as I have paper and ink, I don't really think about it. I'm not going to worry that I'm going to come back and find the house on fire. I'm pretty sure that my 2D printer can handle this print job. But with 3D printers, I made one mistake where I simply left the house and I came back and the print had gone bad and I found just a mess of hot plastic. It was quite scary.
And it can be quite scary to clean up too. Also, I've heard. Thankfully, I so far never managed to end up with something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe thanks to OctoPrint, I don't know.
It's true. You definitely don't want to leave a 3D printer by itself. They can in fact burn your house down if it goes really, really, really wrong. But your point about not leaving it unwatched is really an interesting one, because these prints will take 8 hours, 12 hours even, if you do a big, or more if you do a big print. What's the longest print you've ever done?
Or more. Personally, I think I never got over 6 hours so far, because that's actually the funny thing about it. I got that 3D printer, then I started writing software for it, and all of a sudden I was not actually using the 3D printer anymore for any long prints, because I was so busy writing software. And so I think 6 hours, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that was overnight, actually. So
I've done.
I'm not a patient one.
I've done a number of them that are 10 hours plus, and It's pretty amazing that it worked. I felt like it was pretty amazing that it worked at all. But I realized that I wanted to see what was going on. And this is what was so exciting to me about OctoPrint, because it's not just simply a printer queue, right? I mean, I plugged my 3D printer originally into a laptop, and then I realized I don't want this laptop to be tied up. But I also noticed that I was getting printing issues because I'd be doing other stuff on the laptop. Yeah. And then what would happen? Exactly. I would have buffering issues, and it would stop talking to the printer and things would go wrong. You think it's really important to have a dedicated computer that handles your 3D printing?
Yeah, actually, that was one of the motivational points for me, because at the beginning I had my printer here in my office. It's a quite big one. My first printer was an Ultimaker, the first generation. So that's not something that you have just on your desktop. It's just too big for that. And so it was standing around on the floor with the cables going everywhere, the USB cable to my desktop PC actually going somehow over my lap, and I was not able to use the printer at all while it was printing. And that was around the time when I thought, okay, maybe there has to be something better than that. That is just not usable that way.
Mm-hmm. And how did this start? Did you just write a prototype, or did anything like this exist before you decided to make OctoPrint?
There exists quite a number of solutions that allowed you to basically remote control your printer via Wi-Fi. And I think something like a week after I got the printer, I started looking around the net for something like that. But everything I found handled the printer like a black box. So basically you had something like small web forms where you could upload G-code files, or the actual files that the printer uses in order to print stuff. And that was that. So you could send stuff there, but you did not know, okay, did it start printing now? Is it heating up? Is the temperature at the point it's supposed to be? Or is it, I don't know, at 500 degrees Celsius and the house is on fire now, or something like that? And, and that was the point where I thought, okay, maybe I should try my hand at getting something so that I can work with it. And, that was right before my Christmas vacation break. So that was an ideal time. And so I sat down and actually forked my first iteration of Cura. So I used the communication stack from Cura, which is in fact a slicing engine, but also has this component where it can connect to your printer and actually send the file over to it. And that was the first iteration. And I think after something like 2 days after Christmas or so, I was at a point where I said, hey guys, online on the Google Plus community for 3D printing, I said, hey, I got something here, and it can plot your temperature, and you can send files over to it, and it will then print them and continuously upgrade you on the process, and you can use it from all around the house and stuff. And people were like, oh, that's awesome. I want to use that too. Where's the source? And then I uploaded it to GitHub and made it more usable over the rest of my vacation, stripped Cura from it so that it was a standalone product actually. And basically when the new year turned around, that was January 2013, I thought, okay, well, I'm done now. It was a fun ride. I gotta get back to work now. But people kept telling me it's awesome and asking questions and demanding features and reporting bugs. And suddenly I had a full-blown open source project on my hands, which is certainly not something I had planned on when I started. So, well.
Were you on vacation from a job as a web developer?
Yeah, I actually, not as a web developer. I actually used to do full-time Java development, so back and front, and also a bit. I also had some experience web development wise. I used to work for a big IT consultant company, and I also did so concurrently to OctoPrint over the last couple of years until August last year, when I was able to leave that.
And you picked, OctoPrint's written in Python primarily, correct?
Yes. And Python, JavaScript, of course, for the front-end stuff, HTML, CSS, that's about it, yeah.
Were you using Python in your job? Like, did you try Python because you thought, hey, I do Java for a day job, I'll do Python at night?
it was more like something I had done Python in my. I mean, I always was someone who liked to tinker with stuff. So, I also tried to make it a habit to learn a new language every couple of years. And Python had been the last language that I really dabbled in back then. And I think I learned this in 2010 or I don't know. It's a long time ago. And, Cura was written in Python, so that was one of the reasons why I used it. I also understood it. I really like that language because it forces you to structure your code well due to white space being significant compared to Java, where you can basically write lines like from here to New York and back. And it's a quite mature and quite powerful language. So I also took a look at Node.js at the beginning. But it turns out that it was just not that mature yet. So I actually ran into a lot of trouble, and I know people will probably flame me now for that, but I actually develop under Windows. And the Node.js support or getting Node.js to work with serial ports under Windows, at least around Christmas 2012, was horrible. So I don't know. I think I spent half a day on that and then decided, oh no, I don't want to do this. Let's just go with Python. And so I ended up with Python.
And this is Python 2.7?
It's still Python 2.7. Back when I started, it was, I use a couple of frameworks and libraries inside, and I think Flask, I'm not sure if it's now Flask is the part that actually does the whole web framework thingy for me. And, I'm not sure about compatibility to 3.3 now, but at least back then they still were restricted to Python 2.7 or something that
2.7 is an extremely mature and extremely reliable cross-platform thing. So it is the Python that will never die. So you shouldn't feel bad about using 2.7.
I'm not feeling bad about it. I just feel that, I would feel better if I were compatible to both.
Yeah, indeed. So we keep talking about serial ports. Again, for people who may not have context, you take a 3D model, an STL, that really true 3D representation of the thing you want to print, and then you slice it. And you mentioned Cura. Slicing is the process of turning it from a 3D model into instructions for printing, which is just a text file, G code.
Yeah.
And that G code is sent serially to the printer? That you need to push it out like you talk to a modem or any small serial device?
Yeah, you have to put it. You have you have two options, but in principle you just send it line by line by line by line to the printer, and for each line the printer tells you, yeah, okay, I got that, yeah, okay, I got that, or not. Sometimes if you have some trouble on the line, it will tell you, oh no, I didn't get it, and please send it again. And so you have to have some intelligence in order to be able to handle those resend requests. The other option, of course, is some printers, or most printers these days actually, also have the ability to print directly from a G-code file stored on an SD card. So you take the G-code file, put it on the SD card, put the SD card in the printer, and then on the printer's LC display, or via OctoPrint, because OctoPrint also supports that, you can then select the file and say print. And then even if you disconnect the laptop from the printer, it will continue to print.
That's really the only reason I would want. I was wondering why I would want to print from the card, so I could potentially accidentally unhook the thing.
Not only that, you also avoid the bottleneck that is the serial port, because you're limited to 250,000 baud or less than that, depending on the printer model and all that, and depending on what you are trying to print and how fast you're trying to print, that can actually become an issue.
Really?
So, yeah. So if you have something that, the thing is, if you instruct a printer to print something, and if you instruct it to print a circle, then what most slicers, or really any slicers I can think of right now, will produce for that circle is not do a circle arc with, for 90 degrees and a radius of 2 centimeters, but instead do a little line, then do another little line, then do yet another little line.
So it's a bunch of little arc lengths and not a real
Real lengths.
Oh, real
so
lengths.
line segments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, line segments. And line segments that are supposed to approximate a circle. I mean, you can imagine how many short, very, very short moves that will produce. And for each of those moves, you have one line that has to go to the printer, that has to be acknowledged by the printer, and so on. So that can become a bit much for the port to handle. So, yeah.
So then you are handling the serial work, you're handling the retries, you're also constantly querying in between things, saying, what's your temperature? You show it on this lovely graph. It's quite simple. I just drag my G-code file and I do a nice little HTML file upload, drag and drop. There's also, I understand, talk of having it do the slicing for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, the current development version, or not only the current development version, the current stable version already also allows you to configure Cura as a slicer, because the actual slicing engine that is part of Cura, which is called the Cura engine, runs quite well on the Raspberry Pi. So the problem with slicing is that it needs a lot of CPU power because there's a lot of math going on in there. So usually an ARM processor is not that perfect as a target for something like that. But Dave Brown did a really good job with Cura, and even large files are something that you can even slice large files on a Pi. So I mean, it takes, of course, longer than on a full featured PC, but it's something that finishes in regular time.
Why would I want to do that though? If I like to see where the supports are going to be.
This is actually funny because I'm also in this camp. I also like to have this 3D view and see, okay, it's going to put the supports in there, and if I now change the parameter like that, then it will look like that, and so. But there are actually people who want to be able to just put download an STL and drop the STL file, so the actual model file that they downloaded from something like Thingiverse or Umagine or something like that, and just put that on the printer and have it do everything fully automatically, so they don't want to care about that. And it also offers up things like slicing from something like a mobile app or so where you don't have the app on the mobile,
right,
but instead use OctoPrint as a slicing server and then use it like that. And of course, in the final vision, it would be great if you had something like the 3D view and the slicing preparation and all that workflow, but in the browser, so that you can do it all in there.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, SyncFusion. SyncFusion's mobile, web, and desktop controls are trusted worldwide. But did you know that they also provide educational resources? The Succinctly series of free ebooks has great content on popular technologies in 100 completely ad-free pages. These books are written by industry experts, and topics range from Cassandra to Node.js to Windows 8.1. They are available for Kindle apps and in PDF format, and new ebooks are released each month, so browse their library at SyncFusion.com to download your free ebook today. I wonder if you could talk to the folks at GitHub. You know, they have that lovely STL file 3D viewer now, where you can take an STL file and put it in GitHub, and then you get a 3D view. What if they would give that to you? I actually
looked at that. I think they actually open sourced that already.
Okay.
And I think some guy on the OctoPrint IRC channel also said that he wanted to look into STL viewing within OctoPrint, because the development version now has the slicing support greatly enhanced, so you can have multiple slicing engines. So if you don't like Cura, then you can have via some kind of plugin, can just use another one. And if it's not installed on your Raspberry Pi, but somewhere in the cloud, then that also is something that is in principle possible, as long as someone writes a plugin for it. So you have a little dialog now where you can select which slicer and which file, and you can also reslice things which was not previously possible with other parameters and all that. And the slicing within OctoPrint is still a bit in its infancy. but we are getting there slowly but steadily. Mm-hmm. So my big 50,000 feet vision of all that will definitely be something that allows this full workflow within the browser. So
that's going to be exciting. Absolutely. Now, we've mentioned the Raspberry Pi a few times, but we haven't actually formally come out and talked about OctoPi, which is basically an image of OctoPrint fully prepared and running for a Raspberry Pi. So I can go and take my Windows machine or my Mac. I can set up OctoPrint in a few minutes. Or if I have a Raspberry Pi lying around, like I happen to have, I can download an image and basically have this be, when I added a Wi-Fi adapter, fully wirelessly accessible 3D printer. So in my house right now, on my iPad, I can hit OctoPrint or OctoPi in my browser, and I get this wonderful environment, and I can control the printer remotely. Now, is OctoPi a separate project or a partner, or how does that relationship work?
That is actually a separate project. So what happened was when I started OctoPrint, I put out a big installation instruction on the GitHub wiki for OctoPrint, where I told, if you want to run this on a Raspberry Pi, then you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And personally, yes, I mean, I didn't like that either, but I just did not have the time to do this differently. And then suddenly I got in the Google Plus group, I think, that I maintain for OctoPrint, there suddenly was a post by some guy from Israel who said, "Hey, I just wrote a little image here, which has all this OctoPrint installation included, and also the webcam server that already pre-configured so that you can directly view your prints in your browser, and also the little web browser, not the web browser, the web server that acts as a reverse proxy so that webcam and OctoPrint are reachable under the same URL. And it also has this auto discovery, which you mentioned, where you just type octopi.local and in any browser in your local network, and bam, there is the web interface." And I was like, jaw drops to the floor. Yay. Awesome.
That's open source right there.
Yeah, that was really, really great. And then we actually, Guy Scheffer is the one who did this. And, we are regularly talking now and synchronizing our releases and all that. But in the beginning, it was just him having an idea and just doing it. And that was really, really great for the community, because now it's really just as easy as you said. Download the image, flash it, put it in the Pi, and bam. And the thing is that one thing is still a bit complicated, setting up doing the initial Wi-Fi setup. So because you have a chicken egg problem here, because
yep.
If you have a Raspberry Pi that does not have a monitor, no keyboard, no nothing, how do you get it on your Wi-Fi network?
You know, I hear what you're saying, but honestly, I went over to the television, I plugged it in, I had a keyboard for 5 minutes, I set it up, and I haven't thought about it since. So I think you
did this.
You know.
But there are still people who would be a bit, for whom this would still be a bit complicated. So,
but they're 3D printing. Wait a second. It's too complicated to do that, but they're able to 3D print things? I mean, at some point you have to have a minimum ability level.
That's what I thought too, but after 2.5 years of maintaining OctoPrint, I can now say, nope. You really have a very, very diverse crowd there. So making it easy for basically everyone is something that I really try.
It's reasonable to make it an appliance. You want to make this an appliance.
I still don't want to dump it down too much, because I think if you make it, one thing, as I said, with current printers is that they still require a certain amount of maintenance.
That is true.
And they still require a certain amount of fiddling. So if you dump everything down too much, then this fiddling will not be possible anymore. And
that's why the slicing thing was a little concerning to me. I've downloaded 3D models before, and if I had not paid special attention to them, for example, they weren't completely flat on the bottom. They were just like literally skewed by fractions of a millimeter. And I got weird prints, and I was like, oh, this is just not flat. And I had to go and make changes. It's just one of those things, and you just would never see that. It's almost like you can open a Word file and look at it and then print it, or you can right-click on the Word file and say, quick print, right? And it'll just print. But then you're just fire and forget, and that just seems scary to me.
Yeah, to me too. But there are people, as I said, who I don't know why. I don't understand it,
but you want to support the users.
I try to, yeah.
One of the most amazing things, and if there were a killer feature about OctoPrint, and there's so many, it's the camera. I got the Raspberry Pi camera, and I can see the print. It's amazing. I've mounted it. I actually printed out a little mount. It's sitting on top of it, and the camera then moves with the bed. And you make these glorious time lapses. Could you explain the different open source projects and technologies that you brought together to make the camera streaming in the browser plus the time lapse possible?
That was actually not that problematic to get it to work in the browser because, or let me start from the beginning. At first I thought, okay, great. It would be nice if I could actually see what the printer is doing right now, because seeing temperature graphs and progress bars and all that is all nice and well, but in the end you really want to see that it is not, I don't know, jumping off the table right now or something like that. And then I looked into trying to get a webcam streamed from within Python on a Raspberry Pi. And it turns out that with OpenCV that would have been not a problem at all, but the Pi was not up to it at all.
OpenCV is the Python imaging library that does...
Is one of the Python image library. Yeah, and so this was a dead end, because basically it was running fine on my development machine with like a frame rate of, I don't know, 25 frames per second, all fine, happy, yay. And then I tried to run it on the Raspberry Pi and I was getting barely 1 frame per second, even less than that. So I scrapped all that, threw it away, and started looking for alternatives. And this was when I stumbled across a little open source tool that back then I think maybe saw barely 1 use per year or something like that. It looked completely abandoned, but it's called MJPEG Streamer. So it basically is a little server that connects to your MJPEG, so motion JPEG capable webcam, fetches the images and just streams them out on a socket in MJPEG format. So basically motion JPEG is a moving images format. Think like a GIF, but with JPEG. So perfectly suited for photos. You make a get and it's a multi-part where it just goes JPEG, 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 JPEG. Right,
and
exactly.
never stops. It's
right.
I call it a poor man's MP4.
Yeah, that's also in my motion JPEG, motion there. And the good thing is that because if it can directly take the MJPEG stream from the camera, so it does not have to do much on its own, which is something that is very well suited for embedded devices.
I see. So you're saying it's not compressing in real time. It's just taking a buffer off of the camera and then dropping it onto the socket.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's not that trivial, but this is basically the gist of it. And it turns out that this is exactly what you want to do on a Raspberry Pi, because it basically eats something like 1 or 2% of the CPU at all times, which increases with more users, but still it's okay-ish. And this was when I realized, hey, I might still be able to get this webcam view to work. So basically what happens now is that you just run this little MJPEG streamer server that runs inside OctoPi. A little webcam script detects if you connect a webcam and if it's a USB webcam or if it's a Raspberry cam, and depending on which is what, selects the right configuration in order to launch the server. And OctoPrint simply just embeds this image, this moving image. So OctoPrint itself does not know how to control the webcam. It just knows, okay, there's a URL. And I will embed this there in the website, and boom, you have a moving image. And then there's also this additional feature where you can have it make time-lapse videos of your prints. So basically, this is something that I saw that Cura had and thought it was a very, very nice feature, because it really helps in debugging stuff and also it looks cool. Basically what you need to do for a time-lapse is you just fetch an image in regular intervals and later on stitch this together into a movie. And this is basically what OctoPrint does. So it does not only get told, here is a stream of a webcam to please embed here in the web page, but you also tell it, and here is a URL where you can fetch regular standing still images. And if you now configure OctoPrint to create a time-lapse, and we will use that URL, fetch again the image regularly, and in the end just stitch everything together with FFmpeg, and that's that. So basically, that's the webcam support in OctoPrint in a nutshell. It
is. If you're going to go out and quote unquote sell OctoPrint, and by sell I mean I want people to get excited about 3D printing. So I recently went to a bunch of high school students, so I'm selling them 3D printing, and I showed them the real-time 3D printing, and they thought it was interesting, but their brains didn't explode. Then I showed them a 7-hour print of a coffee cup made with OctoPrint using the time lapse going, basically 7-hour print in 7 minutes. And they just thought that was amazing. That is the feature to show people like, oh my goodness, look at this. It's time lapse and it just builds up this 3D model. And the kids are like, I want to make toys. I want to do this. I want to do that. It is an absolutely extraordinary feature. And also for debugging what went wrong, it has been extremely helpful for me. 4 hours in, I've left. I come back, the print has gone bad, and I can actually watch and see the moment when everything went south. It's a great, great feature.
Yep.
So the last question I wanted to ask you, kind of as we close, is that you had a job. You were doing your Java consulting enterprise kind of big company thing. You had your hobby, and then now your hobby has become your job. How did you pull that off? That is the open source dream.
Yeah, and I certainly did not expect this. So maybe first start with the thing that I had my full-time job, then I had OctoPrint, and then I managed to get my employer to agree to boiling down my full-time job to 80% job. So I had at least one day per week off for OctoPrint work. Of course, with less money, but okay.
Sure.
I mean,
that's very kind of them to allow you to do that.
That's what your passion. Yeah. That's what my passion was all about. And then, but it turned out that this one day it was just not enough, and so I was really starting to get overworked and frustrated, and I just did not have enough time to do everything that I wanted to do because I had so many great ideas, and just I also had to sleep sometime. And then suddenly I got a nice email from some engineer at a Spanish company asking me to, hey, we just discovered OctoPrint, and we also have 3D printers, and don't you maybe want to meet with us? We will invite you, and just come down. And this was like nearly a year ago now, and I flew down there. And we talked, and they basically said, okay, I mean, we really, really like what you do, and we want to hire you.
That's amazing.
And you just keep doing on what you do, and maybe if we need something, because we also want to use it, we really, really want to use it. And if we need something, then we can talk about it and see how best to get it done in a sense that also makes sense for everyone else. And so this is where we are now. I basically work full time for BQ, which is said Spanish company, and I fly down every 2 or 3 months to Madrid to have some face-to-face time with the colleagues. And the rest of the time I sit here in my home office from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, no more than 9 to 5 actually, and code away on OctoPrint. And since I started working full time on OctoPrint, which was in August last year, I have the feeling that I really, really, really managed to move the project forward in large steps. I mean, most of that is still not available to the general public in a way that it's still not on the stable branch. So everyone can use what is being developed all the time. It's completely open still, but it, of course, is a bit of a hurdle for people who are not that comfortable with switching branches and all that. But I think as soon as I get the release out, I'm currently working everything off to get out of the door. People will be amazed. Do
you think? Now, I personally, by the way, I have been SSHing into my Raspberry Pi and occasionally doing a git pull and then resetting OctoPrint and starting again and jumping around the different branches. Do you think that you're a little bit conservative? I think you have so many users that you expect this thing to just work, that you really want this to be a perfect baked thing. Because I've seen some features and I've come back over to stable and I've said, gosh, why hasn't she released this yet?
Yeah, the problem is that a big number of the features that are currently new in the development branch are things that, so for example, the plugin system that is now new, that I really, really need to make, perfect in air quotes, because once this is out and people start using it to develop plugins, I can't really change anything on it anymore. So this is why it's taking exceptionally long right now to get the stuff out of the door, because I really don't want to shoot myself or the project in the foot by now releasing something and in, 3 months think, oh dear, why did I do it like that? And now we are stuck with it and we'll never be able to fix it.
And as a plugin model, when creating a plugin, you are effectively bootstrapping an ecosystem. You're going to have a whole community jump up around your community and start making stuff. And if you don't get that interface right, I could definitely see where that would be a point of stress.
Exactly. And this is why I'm really, really, really spending a lot of time these days documenting and refactoring and documenting some more and refactoring some more. And I wrote a big plugin tutorial on how to write your first plugin and what to do, and with step by step and everything. And people are actually starting to contribute this way. And this is great because up so far, I mean, I just had OctoPrint as a monolithic structure with me being the only person being able to push on that, and pull requests always being something where I had to consider, well, does this really add value for everyone? And will it maybe just add problems later for others and all that? And now it's just like, here's a plugin interface, program against it, and if people want to use your stuff, they can just install your plugin and be happy with it.
So that's a really interesting question. And some people like to have the code their own, and they don't want pull requests. I'm not necessarily saying that this is you, but I'm just saying that people are like, well, this is my baby. I understand where I want it to go. I am the chief programmer. I will decide where the main features are. And then you have to fight with people about pull requests. Or I think you do what you're doing, which is extremely smart, which is make a plugin model and say, listen, you go nuts. Do whatever you want. Stop sending me pull requests. Make a plugin. And if your plugin becomes super popular, then we'll talk later. That's a nice balance between those two choices, I think.
The problem also is the question of maintenance, because basically if I pull in a lot of features from other people, first of all, I get quite quickly something that's called feature bloat. So I have a tool which basically can do everything but brew coffee. But the chances are high that it can do a lot of things, but not do all of them very well anymore, because you constantly have to try to balance everything with each other, and you fiddle around on one end and stuff breaks on the other. So everything becomes needlessly complicated. So this is why so far I always have been quite conservative when accepting pull requests, because I wanted not to end up with features that I personally don't even use, because I don't want them to use them, but I can understand if other people want to use them. But still, if I merge it, then I'm responsible of maintaining it, because usually when you merge a pull request, you will have someone who contributed code, and then he's gone.
Exactly. Pull requests when they fix bugs are a gift, but pull requests when they are a new feature and an entirely new subsystem are kind of an unwanted house guest.
I wouldn't call it an unwanted house guest, but it can become complicated. So this is why one of the reasons why I wanted to have a plugin system in there from, I don't know, maybe half a year down the road from the start of the project, but never found the time and the resources to do it until I started working full time on it. And it's actually funny, because I'm now noticing that I myself am now developing more features than before, but now just as plugins. So, for example, last week I started looking into home automation based on MQTT, which is a pub sub mechanism used for Internet of Things devices. And I actually did this for something completely unrelated, but when I looked into MQTT, I thought, man, that would be something nice to have in OctoPrint, so that it would basically publish its current state on the bus so that other things could hook into that. And so on the weekend, I quickly whipped up an MQTT plugin. So now you can just add MQTT support to OctoPrint by downloading that plugin, and that's it. So it's completely separated from the rest of the code. No one who doesn't want to use it has to use it, but the option is there. And this is constantly happening to myself now. I think of something, I quickly whip up a plugin, and next thing you know, I have something new for OctoPrint, but not directly integrated into OctoPrint, so I can maintain it separately from each other, and I don't have to worry about breaking stuff in between. That's really nice.
Well, I have to say, as a user and as someone who enjoys watching really well-run open source projects, that I have very much enjoyed using and watching you code on OctoPrint. And I want to thank you so much for your time for chatting with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the compliments.
Folks can get OctoPrint at octoprint.org. And if you are doing 3D printing, this is your first step. Set up your printer. Get OctoPrint. It is an absolute joy. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.